What's up, guys? Titus here with another video. It's particularly going over Jeremiah chapter 29:11 and correlating it through 2 Samuel chapter 6 and 7, and how David in particular he was sent the prophet Nathan, and how Nathan was instructing David to follow his heart and to um, carry out the will of God by moving the tabernacle. But in particular, with the tabernacle being moved, David he followed his dreams instead of following the will of God that he had laid before him through the prophecies. And in particular, the way God laid the prophecy to David was through Moses and instructing Moses on how the tabernacle should be built, and therefore proceeded to be moved. And so I just want to start in verse 1, and it goes, "Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem to the remainder of the elders who were carried away, captive, to the priests, the prophets, and all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried away, captive from Jerusalem to Babylon. This happened after Jeconiah the king, the queen mother, the eunuchs, the princes of Judea and Jerusalem, the craftsmen and the smiths had departed from Jerusalem. The letter was sent by the hand of Elisha, the son of Shaphan, and Gemariah, the son of Hilkiah, whom Zedekiah, king of Judea, sent to Babylon, to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, saying," in verse 4, "Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all who were carried away captive, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem to Babylon, build houses and not dwell in them, or build houses and dwell in them, plant gardens and eat their fruit. Take wives and beget sons and daughters, and take the wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, so that they may bear sons and daughters, that you may be increased there and not diminished. And seek the peace of the city where I have caused you to be carried away captive, and pray to the Lord for it, for in its peace you will have peace. For thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of diviners, who are in your midst to deceive you." Pardon me, in verse 8, it goes, "For thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, do not let your prophets and your diviners who are in your midst deceive you, nor listen to your dreams which you cause to be dreamed." And so one of the ways I wanted to correlate that to David's story in 2 Samuel chapter 6 is particular how Nathan the prophet, he was spoken to by God to go tell David to follow his heart in moving and retrieving the Ark of the Covenant of God, and bringing it back to the city of David. And David was initially excited about this, and he wanted to go ahead and carry out the will of God. And so, but later, even that night, God had spoken to Nathan again, and he let him know that you have to move it a certain way. And so, David in particular, he followed through with the plan, and uh, later in the story, it lets us know that because David didn't, though he listened to a prophet, though he listened to a message from the prophet Nathan, God had originally shown David and laid out the foundation for David on how to move the covenant through speaking to Moses, and to which Moses was instructed by the Lord on how to build a covenant, and in particular how to move it as well. And so, but with David, just listening to Nathan, listening to his dreams, the tickling of the ear, he didn't initially abide by God's will. And so, in particular, in verse 9 it goes, "For they prophesy falsely to you in my name. I have not sent them, says the Lord. For thus says the Lord, after 70 years are completed at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you, and cause you to return to this place. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and go and pray to me, and I will listen to you." And another correlating point in that is the fact that David, though righteously he had planned to move the ark, having the music playing, having 30,000 chosen people of Israel being there in the presence to move the ark, they moved the ark incorrectly. And so by them moving it incorrectly, one of David's beloved people was caused to suffer, and suffer tremendously by death. And so in that manner, when due to the ark being moving incorrectly on oxen instead of stably through four Israelites, due to the oxen stumbling and the Ark of the Covenant beginning to fall, one of David's beloved people, Uzziah, him in particular, as he tried to catch the tabernacle, was actually killed in God's wrath and God's fury. And so, in David, after that, he understood what God's mercy is, and he understood that um, it's important to not just hear one prophecy and follow through it, but understand that there's many prophecies in the manner that it's important to abide by all of them. And beginning with Moses and how he should have moved it originally, therefore no one would have had to suffer due to it being moved incorrectly. And so in verse 13 it goes, "And you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. I will be found by you, says the Lord, and I will bring you back from your captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and from all the places where I have driven you, says the Lord. And I will bring you to the place from which I caused you to be carried away captive. Because you have said, the Lord has raised up prophets for us in Babylon. Therefore, thus says the Lord concerning the king who sits on the throne of David, concerning all the people who dwell in this city, and concerning your brethren who have not gone out with you into captivity. Thus says the Lord of hosts, behold, I will send on them the sword, the famine, and the pestilence, and will make them like rotten figs, and that cannot be eaten. They are so bad." In verse 18 it goes, "And I will pursue them with the sword, with famine, with pestilence, and I will deliver them to trouble among all kingdoms of the earth, to be a curse and astonishment, a hissing and a reproach among all the nations where I have driven them. Because they have not heeded my words, says the Lord, which I sent them by my servants, the prophets, rising up early and sending them, neither would ye heed, says the Lord." And verse 19 it goes, just reading again, it says, "Because they have not heeded my words, says the Lord, which I sent to them by my servants, the prophets, rising up early in Moses and sending them, neither would ye heed, says the Lord." And so when David originally was told to follow his heart by Nathan the prophet, he didn't heed the prophecy that the Lord had laid in foundation through Moses earlier in the Bible. And so by not doing so, David suffered, and instead of, and I think it's pretty inspiring how through the suffering, David actually chose to rejoice in the manner of getting right with God. And so in that fact that he took 3 months to study the old writings of how Moses had instructed to move the Ark of the Covenant. And so after those 3 months, he was prepared, and we gather an understanding of the true happiness of David, and once he was really in the presence of God, the Ark of the Covenant, as to which it was moved correctly. Therefore, he got to indwell in the presence of the Lord. And so, in verse 20 it goes, "Therefore hear the word of the Lord, all you of the captivity whom I have sent from Jerusalem to Babylon. Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, concerning Ahab the son of Kaliah, and Zedekiah the son of Mahasiah, who prophesies a lie to you in my name. Behold, I will deliver them into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he shall slay them before your eyes. And because of them a curse shall be taken up by all the captivity of Judea who are in Babylon, saying, the Lord make you like Zedekiah and Ahab, whom the king of Babylon roasted in the fire, because they have done disgraceful things in Israel, having committed adultery with their neighbors' wives, and having spoken lying words in my name, which I have not commanded them. Indeed I know, and am a witness, says the Lord. He shall also speak to Shemaiah the Nethalemite, saying, Thus speaks the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, saying, You have sent letters in your name to all the people who are at Jerusalem, to Zephaniah the son of Mahasiah, the priest, and to all the priests, saying, The Lord has made you priests instead of Jehoiada the priest, so that there should be officers in the house of the Lord, over every man who is demented and considers himself a prophet, that you should put him in prison and in the stocks. Now therefore, why have you not rebuked Jeremiah of Anah, who makes himself a prophet to you? For he has sent us in Babylon, saying, This captivity is long. Build houses and dwell in them, and plant gardens and eat their fruit. Now Zephaniah the priest read this letter in the hearing of Jeremiah the prophet. Then the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, saying, Send to all those in captivity, saying, Thus says the Lord concerning Shemaiah the Nephilimite, because Shemaiah has prophesied to you, and I have not sent him. And he has caused you to trust in a lie. Therefore, thus says the Lord, Behold, I will punish Shemaiah the Nephilimite and his family. He shall not have anyone to dwell among his people, nor shall he see the good that I will do for my people, says the Lord, because he has taught rebellion against the Lord. And so, one of the ways I wanted to correlate that in particular is with Second Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. It reads out, Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly handles the word of the truth. And I just think it's important to, as you hear messages, as you hear preachings in church, and as you gather an understanding of being in the Lord's presence, that you take the time to understand what if what you're hearing and what you're seeing is aligning with God's will. This in particular, if what David had heard from Nathan, if he had heeded and taken into consideration God's will that he propounded unto Moses on how to move the tabernacle itself, then he wouldn't have had to study for 3 months in particular in how to really the tabernacle should have been moved. And so it's just a matter of, or I just want to encourage that as you move in life, as God is presenting things to you, take into consideration all that God has presented to you. And the best way of doing that is just reading the Bible and gathering an understanding of how God speaks to you as an individual through the Bible. And I just wanted to get that video out there. It's definitely been a blessing and understanding to me. So I hope it's a blessing to anyone else as well. If you do have any questions or concerns, definitely drop them in the comments. I'd love to answer. Thanks for tuning in, and y'all have a blessed rest of your day.